Ladies and gents, welcome back to another Enginears podcast. Today I'm joined by David Goat, who's co founder and chief architect at Marshmallow. He's very kindly joined us today and he's going to talk to you all about Marshmallow and their mission and the business itself. But really, these guys and girls are ones that think that they're stepping outside of the norm, which I absolutely love, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But some of the subjects that we're going to be talking about today are mission of the business, challenges from really scaling up from 0 people or yourself and 2 co-founders all the way through to 300 people. That's pretty phenomenal as well when you think about we've been through the pandemic and we've been through really tricky times recently, and some fascinating approaches to engineering. And we do actually uncover, some of what you're building, how you're building it. And obviously, there's no better person to ask in the business than someone who started from day dot. So, David, thanks for coming to join us. How are you?
Very good, and thanks for the kind intro, Elliot. Really pleased to be here.
Pleasure. As usual, we start the podcasts by always understanding a little bit more about your background, who you are, where you're from. So, do you want to give us a bit of an intro into David?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I'm David, co-founder and chief architect here at Marshmallow. I guess my background is I've been a software engineer for the last 12 or so years, typically working in say smaller early stage companies that go through that first bit
Yep.
of scaling. Always really enjoyed that part of the journey. I think there's a lot to learn, some very fascinating things and challenges you pick up along the way as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so, I've always been really fascinated by the engineering space, particularly in, I guess, the sort of tech startup scene. And I think we're lucky to have a very sort of vibrant ecosystem here in London.
Yeah, we are. We're extremely lucky. Talk to us a little bit about the inception of Marshmallow and where that idea came from with you and 2 co-founders.
Yeah, absolutely. So we all met at a previous company we were working at together, and I guess at the point that we were all leaving that business and looking for new opportunities, we got into conversations together, and I guess we'd identified that there were a lot of challenges actually in the insurance space. I guess at that point in time there was a lot of focus. This is around 2017. There was a lot of focus on the fintech space around London. And we saw a lot of parallels with the challenges that were happening in the insurance area. So, maybe huge incumbents, very large market. Perhaps they were, struggling to disrupt and to innovate from a technical perspective. Perhaps they weren't necessarily as customer centric as people would come to expect of their banks, for example. So there were a lot of parallels there. And I guess when we really started to realize actually just how difficult it was for people who are, let's say, not the average customer, right? So this is not something that the main market insurers would cater to really, really well. This might be people that have moved country or just have low credit score or just young drivers, have some sort of circumstance that makes them kind of, not necessarily catered for by the average insurance company super well. We were just really shocked at how much of a challenge that was for them. Whether it's just the really expensive prices they pay, the number of insurers that are declining them. It's just a really, really difficult space for them. I can talk a bit more about that in a few moments.
Yeah, we will for sure. I think it would be a really good idea to give us some idea into Marshmallow's mission in a deeper detail, but also the product offering and really what you're giving back to some of your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the first things to say is so our mission is that we're here to back the ones who step outside the norm. And what that means to us is that people who, through some circumstance in their life find themselves in situations that are different to, say, the average person. We're here to really back them and provide them with financial products that suit their needs. And I think the UK car insurance space is a massive market. There's nearly £16 billion a year being spent through comparison websites and things of the like. And there's around 8 million people here living in the UK who have moved here. And actually, for them, it's a really difficult situation, right? I mean, if you think already cost of living and the difficulties people face, if you layer on top of that people that have just moved country, they're figuring out how to get their new lives set up, and then they run into this problem that not actually all of them will have even anticipated. which is just how expensive insurance is. And when you think about how much it enables them to be able to get on with their lives, they've perhaps moved here to pursue a better life for themselves, a family, whatever it might be. They've got maybe kids to drop off at school, jobs to get to. They've got to get around. And actually, if you compare it to where they may have come from, so like the average cost of insurance for a small car in somewhere like India is maybe about £70. In Poland, it's about £110. Australia, £400. And when they get here to the UK, they're suddenly hit with, an average price that's usually far in excess of £1,000. So it's not something they've necessarily been used to from a cost of living perspective. It's generally a shock for some people. And then you start to also layer in the fact that, they've got to usually lay out this huge cost in one lump sum as well, or they struggle to get things like monthly payment credits. So about 20% fewer companies will actually allow them to pay monthly for their insurance because they have no credit score or a very thin credit file when they first arrive here. And about 3 times as many companies will actually even completely decline them because they don't show up on traditional credit check databases, and things like this. So I guess all in all, it's a very challenging time for them, and I think access to financial service products is really important for people. So that's what we're trying to do, is kind of really make sure the product we're offering fills that gap at an affordable price, and is really giving people the value from the product they need. That they can do things like pay monthly for their insurance, and that's really what we're here to do.
Yeah, I well and truly really didn't realize the complexity of it.
Yeah, it's really challenging, and a lot of companies won't accept things like your driving history from abroad as well, right? So you might have 10 years of good driving experience in the country you've come from, and you arrive here, and it's almost like you're being treated like you've come from zero, right? You're a brand new driver who's just passed their test in effect. They're not accepting things like your no claims discount bonus that you've earned abroad or things like that in general. And we've gone the extra mile to do the operational work to try and make that work for our customers and accept things like your driving history from abroad. Take into account where you passed your test, like which country. Many insurers maybe are just looking at it in broader strokes. So, is it an international license or an EU license? Whereas we're going a bit deeper than that and looking at where people passed and what their driving history was, where they came from.
Yeah. We've spoken about this offline, and I'm really keen to dive into some of the engineering problems that, or engineering solutions that you've come to solve some of these problems. Talk to us about that and how you've overcome some of these challenges for your customers.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic journey for us and a real interesting challenge, actually. None of us are from insurance backgrounds traditionally. So it was a real learning journey for us and a real eye opener into the world of insurance and how things work. I think from like a technology perspective, some of the things that have been fascinating to see, I think, are just how kind of fragmented most insurers' technology stacks are. There's a lot of outsourcing, a lot of off-the-shelf systems, a lot of legacy systems, decades and decades of these systems, and huge data sets that are very difficult for them to join together. And I think we've had some of the, let's say, the luxury or benefit of being born in sort of the cloud native era and being able to sort of take a more modern approach to things like leveraging the cloud, using microservices, different types of databases, and hopefully be building good resilient systems that are well engineered to give us the scale and flexibility we need, and a good cost base as well, which is also important today. I think some of these challenges have really sort of come to light over the last few years as we've gone through the journey of actually becoming a full insurer ourselves. So we started off life as a broker. And then as we raised significant funding, we're sort of valued as a unicorn and had really great investors come on board. We've been able to capitalize an insurance vehicle and become a licensed carrier ourselves. And that's brought with it some of its own challenges too. And perhaps we can talk a bit more about some of those as we get through the conversation.
Yeah, I'd love to. You have done some really great engineering stuff, and I could list, tapping into niche data sets. You've got some really bespoke data models, and you've done some cool things around machine learning. So I think even just breaking down some of those subsections and really understanding that would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we've taken an approach of really kind of trying to source data sets that we believe other insurers aren't really leveraging to the best effect. We're really going the extra mile to do things like, as I've said, kind of validating people's driving history abroad or looking at things like international validation databases. We've built a whole bunch of kind of bespoke models. We've got a really talented team of data scientists and pricing analysts who have built lots of predictive models, things around fraud, around the right kind of price optimization to offer people, how we can understand their risk profile in a more bespoke way. So that has really enabled us to learn and iterate a lot more quickly. So, we're aware, talking to people in the wider insurance industry, that it is a real challenge for a lot of insurers to be able to iterate and use their data in a very sort of agile way, I guess. And we're able to really learn from our data sets a lot more quickly than most companies can, I think. And credit to the people, the guys and girls that have worked on that so hard. We are able to kind of go out and release changes and experiment with those much, much more quickly. So that velocity of change allows us to have a much shorter feedback loop and learning cycle, which really enables us to kind of, I guess, optimize prices and find the right competitive level to be at. And do things like tackle fraud, which is a huge issue as well, actually. I think part of us trying to offer a cheaper offering for our customers and making sure it's more affordable means we have to be able to actually detect and eradicate as much fraud as we can, because that really raises the prices for everyone. And we believe that's a good technical capability of ours, is the work we put into things like fraud detection and prevention through sort of ML models and a lot of sort of validation databases we have. And our approach to doing that upfront as part of the quote and purchase journey, we think really offers a lot of value in terms of how we can give back to cheaper prices for our customers. But look, I think there's other things here as well. So, using technology to drive down the operational side of costs as well. So as much automation as we can, trying to build apps that allow things like a lot of self-service changes of your policy, internal automation as well, so that hopefully our customer service staff and fraud teams can work as sort of effectively and efficiently as possible. All of which we really hope is kind of leading us to a lower cost base and being able to actually ensure that customers can get the best value possible for their insurance.
Yeah, and I've obviously been lucky enough to have a conversation with you prior to this and know that your ethos is really driven through the business around being product and customer centric. So I think that's so key, but understanding just how building your own technology has been able to, I think, or obviously drive down operational costs, which I really didn't put into context until you explained it. So that makes quite a lot of sense how that compares to other insurers on the market. But also, you can iterate and just move so quick and learn from what your customers are doing, how they're purchasing things or their buying habits. But the data that that gives you, I can imagine, is just so important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's one of the interesting learning journeys I think we went on. Is very early in our journeys. We were just starting out. We were speaking to a lot of people from the general industry, and I suppose the general advice was you should probably go ahead and buy some off the shelf solutions or things like that. And it was something we considered for a while. We did look at it. We kind of felt, although that it's maybe appealing at the beginning, it feels like you can get started and start to get the ball rolling. We sort of thought strategically it didn't feel like the right thing for us. We were trying to build that very customer centric model. We sort of wanted to be able to iterate from a user experience and design perspective properly. We wanted to be able to keep the data in sort of formats and structures that we felt we could leverage really well, and sort of avoid this sort of data siloing. So I think, in short, we're really glad we went down this route of sort of setting ourselves up as a product and tech company from an insurance perspective, and sort of as a first class citizen within that is the technology piece,
Yeah.
making sure that we're building the technology stack ourselves, we're customizing things the way we want it to be, to best serve our customers. And we think that can ultimately deliver the most value for them. I think it's interesting, actually, you speak about the value of building some of these things yourself. I think the Ford CEO recently gave an interview, I think, where he was saying that one of the challenges they perhaps have is there's about 150 different modules on their vehicles, and they're all built by different companies, and they don't really talk to one another. There's 100+ languages involved, and it's obviously a very different thing. They're talking about building, the firmware and software ecosystem of a vehicle, but I think some of the same sort of philosophies do ring true for other software ecosystems in insurance too. You look at the way that other insurers maybe are set up, where they have these big data silos or systems that are really difficult to integrate together and get to talk to one another. That can really actually come all the way through to the customer experience ultimately, where perhaps they want an update on where their claims at, and they actually have to call up and be bounced around different departments, or one system doesn't know about another system, and it's just, I guess, it makes for a more disconnected journey, which is something we're hoping we can try to solve for and try to avoid as we go on, and try and really make that user experience as cohesive and customer centric as possible.
Yeah. And I think, B2C products and or a direct to consumer product, usually from a customer experience perspective, you want something now, you want the best possible experience. I think it would be great to try and understand, especially from a back end perspective as well, some of those challenges working behind the scenes on just how you do offer a really, really good experience for some of your customers. Because, people usually imagine, if you want to go and find an insurance quote, you want it as fast as possible, as cheap as possible. That's not technology dependent, but here we're talking about things like real-time updates. We're talking about latency of the systems and the product. Talk to us a little bit about what happens behind the scenes and maybe how you've built some of that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think maybe something that could be a bit underexposed in terms of how people perhaps think about insurance. So I guess perhaps in case we have international listeners, the way that in the UK a lot of the insurance is bought is through things like price comparison websites. So customers can go there, enter their details in once, and be exposed to perhaps 120, 150 companies, something like that, that are all kind of able to decide if they want to offer a quote on that insurance, and then if so, at what kind of price point. And there's a lot that goes into figuring that out, actually. And when we talk about the volumes that this is happening at, there's perhaps about 3.5 million quotes per week coming through these sorts of systems that we would see.
Wow.
And there is a latency issue there. It's not real time sort of bank trading latency type issues, but you've got perhaps in the realm of low tens of seconds to be able to make all of these underwriting decisions, and that might include lots of third-party database validation calls, and lots of predictive models that you're running to try to figure out, could there be a risk of fraud here? What's the right price point to be at? Is this the type of customer that, from a risk perspective, that we think we can insure? So there's a lot going on there. So we've got millions of quotes going through these systems every week. There are some latency considerations there. There are lots of bespoke ML models that we've built. The vast majority of it for us is running on AWS. We're using systems like ECS Fargate, mostly sort of Dockerized Java, Spring Boot microservices, and then into the sort of ML space, it's usually SageMaker endpoints for us that are making the predictive models that we're running.
Nice. Okay. It would be really good to try and understand how that technology has evolved as well over time, because, inception point, you probably had a different idea of what the systems might look like. Are you able to talk to us about some of that evolution over the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the beginning that it was just at the very beginning myself coding away. Then we were grew a slightly larger team, and I suppose we were born into this sort of cloud native era, as I said, where we sort of felt that maybe going for something cloud native on Amazon with microservices was a good approach. We felt, and we thought it would give us the flexibility that we needed. There's a lot of powerful technology there that you can leverage, gives you very good scalability, security, reliability, etc. And actually an affordable price point as well. I guess the earlier stages, we certainly had much fewer services than we have today. I guess you could say they were kind of I wouldn't go as far as calling them huge monoliths. Not that that's a bad thing anyway, but I think that we sort of had probably quite big service boundaries at that point in time. I guess as we got to understand our domain a bit more, we started to decompose these service domains and boundaries into different areas. And I guess we had a sort of proliferation of services from there. So we probably started life, I think, with something in the realm of 2 or 3 services, and that was maybe the status quo for a while. I guess fast forward the clock 5 or 6 years, we're about sort of 80 now, all with sort of different domains owned by different teams. So yeah, there's quite a lot of change that's come with that. I guess fundamentally, the technology stack still looks fairly similar. So it's sort of containerized Java services on the backend perspective, a mixture of things like synchronous communication through REST APIs with JSON, and some asynchronous communication as well, some event sourcing and message buses and things like that. So I guess those things have evolved a lot more over the last kind of year and a half, 2 years, compared to the start of where our journey was. But I guess fundamentally, a lot of the same technology stack is still there. It's just been a lot more evolved than where we were at that point in time.
Yeah, and obviously in the last 3 years, we've had the pandemic, we have a larger macroeconomic situation, which no doubt will have impacts on people, especially when it comes to insurance. But Marshmallow have obviously gone from strength to strength, and you've grown the business to 300 people.
We have, as you said, had a lot of growth that has come over the pandemic, and there's been some challenging times in there. Adjusting to remote work, as lots of people had to do, as well as the sort of economic headwinds that have followed that as well. I think insurance is a very resilient ecosystem from that perspective, particularly sort of UK car insurance, where in order to drive the car legally, you need the cover. So I guess there's some resilience there. However, it's not been immune to challenges around things like inflation, which affects things like the cost of repairs and how long it takes to get parts and the cost of labor. And all of these things do have a lot of impact, which is explaining a lot of the sort of inflation in prices we're seeing in insurance at the moment. But look, I think that when we think about some of the challenges we've had over that period, certainly, I guess it was a important cultural inflection point for us. I think we felt that we were probably at something like about 40 or 50 people at the start of the pandemic. And I think at that point in time, having all worked in, very close proximity and effectively sort of one open space kind of thing, I guess it's very easy to see how the culture sort of naturally evolves from that, the way that we're all interacting day in and day out quite closely together. And we had quite a deliberate focus on our culture and values very early on. It was important to us, and we did it, really right from the start. It wasn't something we delayed till later. But then actually, when we started to have some quite serious growth, and a lot of that was happening remotely as well, I guess some new challenges came in there, right? I mean, it was how do we build relationships and trust with our colleagues? How do we kind of, I guess, get that sort of feeling of camaraderie and sort of, I guess, the sense of innovation that sometimes comes from having those close relationships and sort of talking with people in a less structured way, where not everything's a scheduled meeting on a video call kind of thing. It was difficult, I think, to navigate that at the beginning. I don't think we necessarily found a magic silver bullet or anything like that, but I think there was a lot of consistent focus on how do we maintain our culture as we go through this journey, and how can we kind of try to make people feel as welcome here as possible, to be able to bring themselves to work and to be able to take account of the fact that we want to kind of grow and evolve our culture, whilst we're doubling headcount or whatever, and doing that remotely. Wasn't an easy thing to do, but I think I'm proud of how the team came through it, and I think we've hired some really good people who have also gone on to hire really good people, that have helped make that journey a lot more smooth than it could otherwise have been.
Yeah, great. I think in-person collaboration, especially for SMEs, well, any business really, I think in-person collaboration to then make that shift to fully remote, and some businesses are toying with the idea at the moment of in-person collaboration again and return to office. So I think it's been a real shift over the last 3 years. It'd be great to get your perspective on what have Marshmallow's challenges been around hiring?
Yeah, I think there's been different phases of challenges. I suppose if I think back to really really early us, I guess at that point in time, perhaps we didn't really have much investment or capital, and I guess we hadn't really even found product market fit at that point, and there's no employer brand at all to lean on. And I think that obviously there you're far more reliant on trying to sort of convince people to believe in your mission and to see that there's real potential here and they can really actually solve a problem. I think we were lucky to find some great people who believed in us and wanted to come on board and make a difference and really commit themselves to doing that. I think a challenge there is the pool of people willing to do that is maybe a bit smaller or just harder to find when you don't have these other things like some employer brand or product market fit or significant investment. And perhaps what comes with that, the ability to be super competitive at that point in time in the salary market. If we look at perhaps 5 years ago, um, I think the challenges then changed as we changed and evolved as a company. If we fast forward more to perhaps what today looks like, I guess, we've really come out of that phase of just being that small, tiny startup that's going through a bit of early growth. And I guess we're now a slightly more established company who's going through still some scaling, but certainly more mature than where we were. And that demands, I think, a different kind of ethos, people with different kind of values, people with different approaches to doing things. When you get into the realm of being a fully regulated licensed insurer and you look at what that demands of us and the sort of rigor we give towards our customers, it's a different mindset to perhaps the one that the people you might hire on day one, who just have a different approach and different mindset to building. But I think it's a very competitive talent market. I think we're competitive in that, and we really see good traction from people we're hiring. We're hiring some really great people. I think the challenges really, I think, are keeping people kind of really engaged in what you're doing and believing in the mission for the long term, and really coming along for that ride with us, and really being part of that journey. I think people have to kind of see that long-term vision and really buy into it and believe in it, and see the difference they're making. Actually, I think that can make a huge difference to people when you're actually seeing that the work you're doing has purpose. You can feel the effects of it, and we still move very quickly as a company. You can see the effect of the work you're doing. I think they're real sort of bonuses for us that we're able to offer an environment like that, and give people a lot of autonomy to be able to work from a technical perspective within that remit.
Yeah, especially you founded the business, co-founded the business. You've obviously been fully regulated in that process, amassed some serious amounts of funding. You've grown extremely well. You've obviously delivered a great product to your customers, and you've got some great engineering challenges that we're going to touch on. So I think you and the team really need to give yourself some credit, because Marshmallow's been a business that Engineers, artifacts we followed for a period of time, who've done phenomenally well, who have a great name in the industry.
Oh, thank you. Really appreciate that. I think, look, we've been lucky to have some really fantastic people, past, present, working here. I think, we couldn't have done it without them. And the people is really what makes, I think, this business so enjoyable to be part of. I think, as you say, things do change, they evolve, and the challenges we had, at the beginning are different to where we are today. I think we're really pleased and proud of ourselves from the perspective of being into in a situation where we're now profitable. And I think that's a great thing to be able to say in these economic conditions. I think that also to be able to kind of know that we've actually helped hundreds of thousands of customers
Yeah.
find a product that fits their needs, and helps them in, as we touched upon earlier on, in a time of actually challenge and change for them. They've perhaps moved country, they're in a different situation, maybe they've just got low credit score, whatever it is. These things affect people's lives and their ability to be able to go about their lives. And actually to be able to save people hundreds of pounds on their insurance, is very meaningful for them. And to do that for hundreds of thousands of people, I think does feel very rewarding.
To be profitable, at the stage of business of where you're at with, is just phenomenal. Is just absolutely phenomenal. So really well done. Really well done. I-
I appreciate
if I was to come in and sit alongside Marshmallow's technology team, what kind of engineering challenges do you think that are here be spoken about?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there are numerous. Obviously, we've got lots of different teams focused on different domains and areas. I think, for us, there's a lot of challenges at the moment around how we evolve our claims offering, and how we make that much more customer centric. So I think we're certainly looking at the user experience side of that and how we can give people much more deep insight into where their claims are. And that involves a lot of kind of data transformation, a lot of data shipping between different systems. being able to leverage the data in the right way, making predictions about when things are going to happen. There's some real challenges around that. I kind of touched briefly upon fraud earlier, but I don't want to understate that. It's a hard problem. The fraudsters are smart and they evolve, they do new things, and we're constantly having to evolve with that. And fraud's a really important big piece. It's not easy. There's a lot of predictions around different behavioral things, around different ways people try to get around fraud protections. There's a lot of data involved in that as well, which gives you some latency and scale challenges, and the right way to structure that data when you're talking about a database that have billions of nodes in terms of different data points about how people might have quoted, and what the links between those sorts of quotes might be. That really does give you some challenges around the way you can do that quickly, efficiently, reliably, to be able to give back quotes with accurate prices, with low fraud risk. That's not an easy thing to do. So there's some constant attention towards that. I think, from a pricing perspective, we're always looking for new ways to better understand our customers as well. So I kind of speak a little bit about the fact we don't want to be painting as average, broad brushstrokes kind of thing. We're trying to understand people on a bit more of a unique, bespoke level about their individual circumstances. Doing so requires perhaps some different thinking about the data points you use to price and assess the risk of someone, and the data sets you use to do that. So we're always looking for new opportunities to leverage new data sets or look for new trends in data that can help us do that, which again is not an easy thing to do. So we're trying to kind of make sure that we've got the right kind of models in place, the right people in place, the right analysis in place to be able to make all these predictions, to do that in a timely manner. And ultimately, actually, really once you work all of that through to the point of someone buying a policy, then providing that great customer experience afterwards, whether that be interactions through our apps or them speaking perhaps on live chat to one of our customer service team, their renewal, making a change to their policy, whatever it might be, trying to make all of those interactions as delightful as possible.
Yeah, good. Okay. And talk to us a little bit about the growth of Marshmallow, and if people are listening and they're super compelled, which they should be by some of what we've spoken about today, talk to us a little bit about the growth of the business in the technology team and where you might be hiring over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think we're really doubling down on trying to grow the UK car insurance business that we have. As I said, we're pleased that's profitable, but we need to make sure that we can continue to sustain that and grow that. We're really happy to have helped hundreds of thousands of customers, but there's so many more to help. As I said, there's sort of more than 8 million people in the UK who moved from abroad. Then you can broaden that out into people with low credit scores, or students, or people that just have situations which make them maybe not best suited to other car insurers. There's a long way to go basically for us to help there, and I think we've got a lot of work we want to do around our claims experience. These are very important things to us. It will take many years to continue to pursue that mission, which is what excites us. It's something for us to continue doing, and really shoot towards. I think there are a lot of technical challenges along the way there as well. So I think there's some really interesting sort of high volume data challenges. We've got challenges around how we start to use more AI and ML around the business. I think that there's a lot around how we will actually continue to evolve the ecosystem. I mean, I can actually talk a tiny bit more in a second about some of the perhaps challenges we have technically about the way that our microservice systems have evolved. But I think that these are real big challenges. They're very meaningful for people. They'll really improve user experience. They'll help drive down cost, and that will help us serve more and more customers and just continue to hopefully take more market share and grow, and do so in a sustainable way. I think that will put us in a really strong position in future. And hopefully people can really see the value of providing that to people. Like, I don't understate how much difference it actually makes to people. I think it's so actually humbling to talk to real customers who've shared some of their experiences with us. And when you actually try to empathize and put yourself in that situation of just like being in that new place, perhaps not expecting the insurance to be so much, and really having to question, can I even afford a car at this point? When you really think that perhaps you played some role in helping them achieve that and being able to go about their life, it makes a huge difference for them. I don't think that can really be understated, how much impact we hopefully can positively have on people if we execute our mission well.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. And I think for people listening, anyone listening, really, in truth, there's a serious team here who have an incredible social mission, really, to improve situations for people going through, insurance experience. Please do touch on that microservices situation, or how that's evolving, because I want to try and understand that as well for users.
No, absolutely. Look, I think that when I think about some of the maybe my biggest learnings or challenges that I think we faced over the years, I think maybe like any growing, scaling startup, scale up, I think you obviously go through a lot of change, a lot of reprioritization. You also have to really look in the mirror hard and face the fact of some of the decisions you might have made earlier on, where perhaps there was more constraints around, how much funding and runway do we have and speed to market and all of these things. And those things remain important. But like, I guess, particularly at the beginning, you're perhaps making technical decisions that aren't going to scale forever and do need addressing. You need to go back and look at these things. That isn't the learning. I think that's very obvious, and I think lots of people have that. I think that for me, one of the things that I perhaps underappreciated was just how much the incumbent domain knowledge of the people in those teams really matter. I think when you look at the cognitive load engineers face when they're thinking about the business domain they're in, the technical complexity of the microservices they're running, or any technical ecosystem they're running, you can't actually underestimate how much the domain knowledge of those teams really matter. We've been through situations where we've pivoted teams to look at other things, or we've transitioned them to look at other opportunities, to really maybe we had a challenge around some part of customer experience, or we've really wanted to improve part of our fraud ecosystem, or we've needed to kind of, I don't know, add some sort of new add-on offering, it might be breakdown cover or windscreen cover or whatever it might be, where we've sort of pivoted people away from what they were originally doing. I think one of the big learnings to me is just how important it is to try to maintain that domain knowledge, which might sound like a really obvious thing to say, but I just don't think you can actually appreciate how difficult it is until you actually sort of lose some of that when you see people move off to other areas of the business and start focusing on other things. If you haven't taken a smart approach to how you're going to kind of share that domain knowledge, perhaps by kind of growing the team sort of a bit more organically first before you kind of look at splitting the focus and having a group of people kind of keep maintaining these parts of the system. I think it really is actually quite painful when you don't do that. And I hope we've learned that lesson. I certainly feel like I've learned it. But I think that it's just one of those things until you experience it and live through it. I think it's quite hard to understate how difficult it is for new engineers to come into this brand new space and kind of pick things up. And we invest quite a lot now, particularly in trying to make sure that the sort of barrier to onboarding and upskilling is hopefully as low as possible. We take it very seriously to make the developer experience as good as we can. We do have people focused on DevX here at Marshmallow, and we look at sort of surveying our users, trying to make sure we understand what their pain points are in software development here in engineering, and we try to address those. But I guess I'm just saying, kind of like, even with all of this effort, it's kind of, you really do have to appreciate how important the cognitive load of the work people are doing is, and trying to understand the complex domains that they're in matters so much.
Yeah, that I think that's a really valuable lesson. Honestly, um, I don't underestimate just how much that domain knowledge is needed, because I think, referring back to, what you'd said maybe 5 minutes ago or so, just really getting a good understanding for how valuable the business has been for customers, have going back to then the domain knowledge of engineers, and understanding what they're building for their customers, or just a particular part of the business, I think is, yeah, I do think that is incredibly valuable. You can translate that to other industries. If you're building a video streaming service, if you're building a trading service, maybe for your customers, really understanding nuances in there and why that's so specific to your customers, it makes total sense. It makes total sense. And it's good to see that you've evolved with that, you've understood it, and now actually introduce something for the business that means people coming in, they can be upskilled, they can have a great onboarding experience, which I think is really key for for any business, really in truth.
Yeah, I think that the difference between having, an engineering team who are, super engaged, who are very, very productive, and able to kind of really focus as much of their attention as possible on new value creation as opposed to too much kind of maintenance overhead and just dealing with, perhaps the cost of lots of tech that you failed to pay back. I think, if you can continue to tackle that problem and try and make sure that people can get themselves into a place where the systems are well built, they're reliable, they're well maintained, the code is easy to understand, and the services interact very well together, are well tested, etc. I think the closer you can get to achieving that, the better really for having engaged, productive engineers who can really actually just deliver more for the business as a whole. It sometimes feels a bit slower along the way. It's the illusion, I think, of moving a bit more slowly. You might feel in the moment, until you take that sort of slightly zoomed out macro view, you realize how much faster it is to actually work that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say a big thanks for coming to join us. I know that there's some really, really interesting things going on at the business at the moment, which no doubt, if you continue in the same vein, you will absolutely smash through and hit some of your goals. But it's a mission that I can align to. Loads of people listening will be able to align to. The London tech community is so vast, but it's full of such diverse people that no doubt can relate to this situation. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the community and some of our subscribership react to this one. Obviously, a massive thanks for taking some time out of your really busy day to come and share about what you guys and girls are building. Good luck for everything in the future, and we'll have to revisit this in 12 months and see how the business has evolved. For everyone listening, likes, shares, subscribe, come and listen to the Marshmallow journey. There's going to be careers sites and everything else included below for you to check out what they're hiring for over the coming weeks, months, and David's LinkedIn profile, so you can reach out to him and follow their journey or follow David's journey in particular. David, like I said, a massive thank you.
And thank you, Elliot. It's been a real pleasure. I'm really happy to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Enginears is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found Enginears.io. It's no underscore. We've also got a website which is engineers.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.